We are in a unique period of time where being a landlord or doing lease options and acquiring buy and hold property that pays you fundamentally forever is a good market.
That's simply what you're doing, is becoming that middleman of the product, right, which is the inventory and is real estate.
Yeah, basically what we're making is we turned real estate into a commodity.
He has done over 50,000 deals, we determined last night as we were visiting, as well as done hundreds of millions of dollars worth of real estate. Well, welcome to the Massive and Passive Income Show. I'm Colter Hansen, and this is a special episode. We got to invite Chris Wilson onto the show today, and welcome, Chris. But also, thanks for the last 24 hours of instruction and you flying in from Arizona and taking the time to be here. But I just want to welcome you here to Idaho, but also welcome you to the Massive and Passive Income Show, and would love to talk about how you got started in real estate, kind of why you got directed that way, and then dive into a couple of the strategies that have been so powerful for you.
Well, you know, I got started. Thank you first off for inviting me in. I got started in real estate quite simply by mistake. When I got started doing fix and flips many years ago, like in the 80s, and we did fix and flips. I was single. I did fix and flips to generate income. And then along the way, I got married, and we had kids and decided we needed more income, so I was working a corporate job because that's what you're supposed to do. And we needed more money, so we did more fix and flips. Along the way, back in those days, some of those fix and flips in the late 80s, early 90s didn't sell. They became rentals. And one day I got this wild idea to do something called a lease option, which I'd never tried. I just heard about, but it made more money. So we had a tenant come in that had about $15,000 on a $100,000 house that he wanted to buy, but he couldn't get a loan. So we did a lease option. He gave me the 15 grand, signed a lease. We had a 2-year option. At the end of 2 years, he bought the home. And I thought, great, this is the easy way to make money.
Well, that's a nice happenstance to land into real estate, and what you've built since the 80s is really pretty incredible.
Well, when I decided I was going to leave Lucent in 2001, and for those of you not familiar with Lucent, it was a telecommunications company, and they had merged with my company, which really mean they took over. And I really didn't like working for Lucent that much. They were kind of an interesting company. A lot of old traditional American companies are. So I told my wife I wanted to quit working. And I was making 6 figures. I had high bonuses. She said, well, as long as you're making as much money, that's fine. Well, fixing and flipping wasn't doing that. We didn't have enough lease options at that time. We didn't have enough rental properties at that time. So I put together something we called wholesaling. And at the time I put that together, most wholesalers were buying at auction and selling to an investor group, so you were basically double bidding. You were bidding against other investors, and you were bidding against the people that were at auction. And we were doing fix and flips that way, and it provided enough houses. But I thought we ought to be able to wholesale on the open market. And the way I got started doing that is we were at auction, and I bought 2 properties. I had bought one at auction, and I had gotten one on the open market. And as a fix and flipper and working a job, there was no way I could do both. Mm-hmm. So I called up a friend of mine who was also working with me and said, hey, Sheila, you want to buy one of these? Give me 10 grand, it's yours. And she did. So I took that concept and I created what's often taught as wholesaling now, where we bought properties on the open market. We used assignment contracts or double contracts back in the day. Today it's assignment contracts. And we assigned those interests in those properties to somebody else. It was a quick way to make $10,000 on a sale. Started off, it was taking us about 28 days to sell them. In the end, it was taking less than 7 days. So we would cherry pick. We'd keep the properties we liked as fix and flips, except we weren't flipping them. We were keeping them and turning them into rentals. And the properties we didn't like, we were just wholesaling out. And we were using the wholesaling cash to build up a pool of money so that we could fix and flip. Back then, I didn't understand that you could go after investor money. That took me a few more years to figure out. And what I did is I put together a core group of people. Most of us were leaving Lucent. Most of us were either retiring or being forcibly downplayed. In 2001, I wanted to leave, so I had to replace my income. We used wholesaling to do that, to keep my wife happy. And along the way, you start making money and other people start following you. We build up a group. We went from wholesaling to more rentals and then into lease options. And then we opened a real estate business and started catching other businesses along the way.
Wow, good for you. So wholesaling, can you just give like the basic concept of, I mean, I understand the assignment, but if somebody were to go into a contract, how do they assign it to somebody else?
That's a good question. Basically what wholesaling is you're a middleman. Much like a lot of the commodity markets out there, we're playing in the same game, we're playing it the same way. So we sign a contract to purchase a property, knowing that we don't really want to purchase it, we want to give our position to somebody else. That's the assignment contract. So we have a purchase contract between myself and the home seller, and then I go out and find a buyer who wants it more than I do, and we assign my position in the contract to them. Now, if they don't perform, it falls back on me. Some people don't believe it should, but it does. That's the reality of the situation. I gave somebody my word I was going to buy it. We're going to go through with it.
Yeah.
Generally, we find qualified investors that we wholesale the property to. We do it relatively quickly, and what ends up happening is I'm the middleman. I pay no cost. Today, with the assignment contract, it's well established. Back in 2001, 2003, it wasn't well established, so we developed our own establishment. Today, I just show up as an assignment fee that goes against the seller side of or the buyer side of the contract. The buyer pays off the seller. I get paid out of the middle. It's now the buyer's house, now the investor's house. Whether he's fixing and flipping it or whether he's renting it is irrelevant to me.
Yeah. Well, wholesaling, tying it to the commodity market, like you said, if somebody were to buy salt from the producer, the person that goes and gets the salt, and then it sells that to the end retailer, that's simply what you're doing, is becoming that middleman of the product,
right,
which is the inventory and is real estate.
Yeah, basically what we're making is we turned real estate into a commodity. That's fundamentally what we did. Before, real estate was always buyer and seller, direct transaction. We just turned it into a commodity using something called owner's equity. And owner's equity is the difference between what the house is worth and what we're contracted to pay based on comps. What we're contracted to pay, that's our owner's equity. And what we're actually assigning is that owner's equity to somebody else. The fact that the rest of the contract goes with it is just normal business practice. Yeah. And it's a well-established business practice. Like we said, the commodities market does it every day. Okay. Usually there's 3 or 4 wholesalers in a commodity like salt. There's the guy that goes and gets it from the producer, there's the guy that refines it, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to do any work. The idea of wholesaling is I do nothing. I just set up the deal, assign it, and get out.
You pass paper.
Pass paper, yeah, that's what we're doing. We're passing paper. It's not real estate.
Yeah.
So you got to remember, when you're passing paper, when the paper goes, there's nothing left. You got to go find more paper to get.
So you got to keep hustling.
You got to hustle.
And I would tie that just from the show standpoint is, from a massive income standpoint, you are generating temporary cash from a specific deal. That is one deal, and now you have to move on to the next deal. And that would be the massive incomes that we create.
And we're doing it using basically ordinary income instead of capital gains. Mm-hmm. The difference is, since my name's never on the house, it's not a capital gain. All I'm doing is taking income from the transaction. But since I own it, I can sell it. So you got to make sure it's not commission. I own it. I own that owner's equity. I can sell that owner's equity. I'm not taking commission. I'm not violating any of the real estate laws. I'm just taking ordinary income, so it's subject to ordinary taxes. Where if my name ever goes on the property, now when I sell the property, regardless of what I sell it for, there's a capital gains event. I'm trying to avoid that, trying to avoid my name being associated with it.
Well, and there's a lot of tax regulations that come, in between those two classifications, but
yes.
I think we'll dive into that on a different show. You also mentioned lease options. Can you give the basics of the lease option and why that's such a powerful strategy?
When you rent a property, you get monthly rent. And the monthly rent is usually the differential between what you're paying for your mortgage and what you're charging for rent. In most cases, it ought to be at least $400. For the last couple of years, it was easy to get more than that. we're going back into a market where it's a little harder to get more than 400. 400 is kind of marginal to survive as a landlord. You're basically one major problem away from being bankrupt. So when you do a lease option, you get a non-refundable option fee down in front. You still get the same monthly rent because rent is rent. And you're selling the property. And what you're basically doing is the tenant has the right within the interval of the option. My options are usually 2 years. They have the right within the interval of the option to exercise their right to purchase the property. In return for that, they give you a non-refundable option fee, which you and the tenant negotiate. That fee plus the monthly rent gives you a lot more income. And you have to remember that fee is owner's equity, so it's not taxable until the house sells. So the only thing you get that's taxable in the interim for that 2 years is your revenue on rent. And if you use depreciation correctly, your revenue on the rent kind of disappears.
So a really powerful profit strategy for an investor, because now you're able to collect some of your owner's equity as well as get the monthly rent. And so now you have a cash flow and you have an even better tenant than maybe you would otherwise, because that person is even more invested in the property because they want to close on it and own that at the end of the option period.
Right. I find about half my owners buy the property or half my tenants buy the property. The other half don't. They either get a 1-year extension or they decide to do something else and move on. Doesn't matter to me what they do. The nice part about it is when they buy the property, I can use a 1031 exchange to defer the tax liability. I don't have to recapitalize the depreciation. It all goes in the 1031 exchange and I buy another property. And I just keep doing it. And I keep doing it. Somewhere along the line, I'm going to pass away. My kids are going to inherit it. They inherit it at the stepped up basis at that time instead of carrying the tax liability I've been 1031ing away.
And all the while, you're able to collect all the rents on those houses. And as you step up, which can be into one property or several like-type properties.
Right. 1031 exchange is like for like. In this case, we're talking about real estate, real property. Mm-hmm. So it's any real property for any real property. You can add money to the 1031, you just can't take less money. So all the money into the 1031's got to be accounted for coming out or more. So you can buy multiple properties. Frequently we do.
Yeah. Well, and coming back to this lease option, I love the concept for an optionor as well, because they're able to tie up the property and commit to a particular purchase price, which hedges a little bit of their risk as well. And so if selling this concept to somebody that's coming in with an option fee, they're able to secure a place without having the money or the credit or whatever it is that's holding them back from being able to go and buy it outright then.
Sure.
You know,
think of a doctor. A doctor starting a practice has no credit. In today's world, banks will rarely give them money, but they need to live somewhere and they have a lot of cash flow. So by doing the lease option, they get the house, they get to preserve their down payment because that's their non-refundable option fee that applies toward their purchase at the time. They get to keep that money, they don't pay any more than standard rent, and at the end they end up with the house if they decide to exercise the option, so they benefit.
What a beautiful way for them as the buyer, renter for the period of time, but then buyer at the end of the option to be able to take advantage of and be able to feel like they have ownership in a property.
Exactly.
So, well, that's what we do. We create win-win transactions. Right?
Well, we try to.
Yeah.
I mean, not all go well, but we try to create a win-win. That's why we apply their option fee to the purchase price. It's fair to them, it's fair to us. It's all going into the 1031 anyway, so what difference does it make to us?
Not much. Well, and what we do as business owners, we solve problems for a profit, right?
We solve problems for our profit, yes.
Yes, we do.
That's always true. All business owners do that. We're humans. We all have that innate greed factor. That's why we all look at doing it. That's the innate greed factor that we're solving. We solve their problems and we benefit from it. Mm-hmm. They benefit too, but we benefit in terms of income. They benefit in what their want and needs are.
It's a value exchange. We're offering something or a service or a problem solution that they then get, and that's what they're paying for.
Right. We're removing their housing challenge.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, that's what we're doing.
So as you go through the history, you exited a nice corporate job 20 25 years ago, 20 some odd years ago?
20 some odd years ago, yeah.
Okay. And so since then, what have you seen in your portfolio and how that's accelerated since that time of you being able to have that comfortable job, invest on the side, but then committing full time and doing it with a group? Can you talk a little bit about partnership that you've established, as well as just what your growth curve has been?
Well, the growth curve has been kicks and starts at times. I'd be lying if I'd say 2008, 2009, 2010 wasn't a tough time. We had property that you couldn't sell because nobody was buying, and you had to maintain it and get through that period. There are tough times. It's not whether there will be tough times, it's whether you have a plan to handle the tough times. As far as partners, all we have are partners. If in our business or in my business model, if you want to do real estate, you're a partner, and your performance or your pay is based on what you do. Now, obviously, we give you some guidelines for what we want you to do, but we don't have employees because employees get paid whether they work or not, and I didn't want to deal with that. I came from the corporate world. I knew how that worked. I wanted partners that would do their part. So basically, when I got started, what I looked for is where I was weak. I hate paperwork. So the first partner I brought in was somebody that loves paperwork, because I'm not going to do it. Somebody else had better. My idea of keeping tax receipts is throwing them in a box and somebody else look at them. And that's kind of the way we handled it. And Bill liked doing the paperwork. He liked doing the accounting. So he did all the tax work and kept all the paperwork together. Works perfect. When you're going out and starting a business, you have a set of skills. What you're looking for is partners that have skills that you don't have. If you bring in more of you, you never get anywhere. You want to bring in people that have other skills so that you're getting exponential increase in your business. The business feeds itself. Real estate, no matter how big you think it is, it's word of mouth business. If you screw somebody, everybody knows about it. If you do a great job, a lot fewer people know about it, because the people that know about it aren't talking. But boy, the minute you screw somebody, they tell everybody, and they tell everybody else that they can find. They'll stand in the line at the grocery store and bitch about it. When you do a good job, people don't talk about it, but they start noticing. And then people start coming to you and wanting to talk to you about doing deals. And that's how your business grows. And it's a self-feeding growth. It's not one-for-one growth. It's basically a self-feeding exponential growth.
Yeah. So your marketing is just doing good deals.
My marketing is word of mouth and living up to my word. I give you my word. We follow through. There's been times that I wish I didn't have to, but I still gave my word, so we still follow through.
Well, I like what you said on the wholesaling aspect of deals, is that you're ready to assign this to someone, expecting them to fulfill on the deal that you've just assigned to them, but you come back, if that person you assigned it to doesn't go through with the transaction, you're going to get it done.
The rule in contract law is if I assign the contract and the assignee falls out, I'm still liable for the contract. So I still have to do the contract, and there's rules on when you can and can't assign the contracts, and there's rules on what contracts can and can't be assigned. When do I have an equitable interest? When the seller thinks we're going to close. So if there's a 10-day inspection, the seller doesn't know if we're going to close until that inspection period closes, because I can get out of it for any reason in most real estate contracts in that 10 days. So the assignment period actually isn't until I'm done with that. Most people seem to miss that point. It's not worth dealing with illegal commission and dealing with contract violation laws. You're better off just to live up to your word. You live up to your word, people learn who you are.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really great point. And just a reiteration of when we go to commit on a contract, and I've had the same experience, is that, you know what, I had a deal, I had the second deal, and the second deal fell through, and I just have to go ahead. And it's still positive for me, because I've negotiated a transaction that's going to create some owner's equity. And even though I didn't get to pass that on to the next person on deal number 2, it still benefits me because I end up with a good deal.
Exactly. And remember, if that person doesn't follow through on the assignment, you assigned it to the wrong person. I mean, let's face it, most serious real estate investors, if you assign a contract to them and they've given you their word they're going to purchase, they do. And those are the people I deal with. I don't deal with the pretend investors or the guy that just wants a house. He slaps some paint on one wall and mows the front lawn and everything's good. He makes $100,000. Find somebody else to deal with. Those just aren't real investors. Deal with real people that know what they're doing. You give them an honest estimate of the house and we go on. Very rarely do I have an assignee drop out of the contract unless we have a problem with them getting money. Usually that's because they're using hard money and it's November, December timeframe, and hard money's dried up till the beginning of the year again.
Yeah.
Rarely that happens. I know that's a problem in that period, so we try not to assign contracts during that period.
Fair enough. So if we were to now look forward a little bit in your business, what are some of the big visions you have, and what are you trying to accomplish?
Well, in my business, I'm getting old, so I'm not looking to really grow my business much anymore. We're just kind of maintaining what we have. We have enough. We're just kind of leaving it alone. Mostly what we accomplish is we spend a lot of time figuring out where the market's going and making sure we're well adjusted so we're not hit with surprises. And markets change. Markets go up and down. Markets are cyclic. That's normal. You kind of have to plan for it. Right now we're watching jobs to make sure we stay out of recession and we stay out of any trouble with people having the money to buy houses, because that would impact our marketing business and that would impact our real estate business. We just stay on top of the data.
Yeah. So if you're to have, one suggestion or several to somebody to the person that's just starting out in investing, the person that has been in it for 5 years but feels like they've hit a roadblock, and then to the more advanced investor, start where you wish, but what would you suggest to any one of those individuals?
Well, the person starting out investing is probably the easiest. In today's real estate market, we are in a unique period of time where being a landlord or doing lease options and acquiring buy and hold property that pays you fundamentally forever is a good market. The rental demand is rising, the population is rising. With the interest rates being higher and in cash or salaries kind of flattening out, people can't afford to get houses, they can't get the reserves to get their loans. But that doesn't mean they don't have money, they just don't have the reserves the bank wants. Those people have to rent. They have no other choice. Excuse me. So if they're going to rent, being the landlord and having the houses where they want to live is an advantage to you. To get the money to buy the houses, I would be looking to put together a pool of investors, people that have 401k money and haven't used it yet and are waiting to figure out where they're going to go with it, and put together a pool and promise them a return on investment guaranteed by real estate. It's really not that hard to do in terms of where they can go. For the 5-year investor, he's hit a threshold where he doesn't seem to be able to grow. Most likely he's trying to do it himself and he's hit the threshold at which he can do work. And he needs to start bringing in partners or other people to spread out his ability to do work and to make his job easier. For the seasoned investor, if they're truly a seasoned investor, they should be able to go anywhere they want and do anything they want if they're following the data. If they're not following the data, they better start.
Thanks for that. I think that helps the entire audience be able to see kind of where they're at and establishing that from a standpoint of, I'm just starting, I'm at the 5-year, I'm going to break through some barriers, I got to put some processes in place that help me create a business that can become, procedurally correct in being able to get more deals done. And then that guy that, is going to be the more advanced investor can accelerate that, but maybe even step away from the business because he's put the right business in place.
Now, if he's an advanced investor and he's got some partners working with him, or in some cases employees, if that's the way he chose to go, he ought to be able to step away. He ought to be able to spend more time doing other stuff. That's purely his decision.
Yeah. Like hunt.
Like hunt, yeah. Like hunt. My favorite thing to do, hunt.
Well, and last night, Chris and I were able to visit a little bit, and I felt like it was, I really appreciated your response in that, what is your favorite hunting experiences? And I hope it's okay that I share, but his response was the opportunities he's had to go with his girls.
Yeah, family.
And his grandson, and I thought that was incredibly powerful. I have 4 girls that's what I live for, and the family aspect of what this real estate investing game can create for us, it really has its advantages. And even though it demands a lot of work out of us at different times and it goes through those ebbs and flows, I appreciated that insight and context and that sentiment toward family and what we're actually working for.
And you know, every business takes 3 to 5 years to get off the ground and running. I don't care what you're doing. Why should you expect your real estate business to be any different? But at some point, it's not about chasing a dollar. It's about chasing time with the family. When I worked for Lucent, I traveled a lot. I wasn't home for a lot. Now I'm home for everything. It's what you want to make it.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your time. This is Chris Wilson. He has done over 50,000 deals. We determined last night as we were visiting, as well as done hundreds of millions of dollars worth of real estate. And what a privilege to be able to visit with him. Thank you again for your time.
Well, thank you. And to all of you, if you're thinking about doing real estate, get with somebody that can teach you to do real estate and get started. There's no time like today. Today's a good day to start. Tomorrow the market changes and then you have to relearn something else. So that's up to you.
Thank you.